Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. Extra amazing bro show. People live for the pound there. It's good to see you, Ryan.
It's gonna be amazing.
That's right. It's gonna be amazing. So Crystal is off today, but we still have an amazing array of topics. I gotta do the tough part. I actually gotta set up this damn show. So what are we covering today? TikTok. So the House passed a piece of legislation that would either force a sale or ban TikTok if their parent company ByteDance does not agree to sell it. We're gonna talk about that. What exactly is in the bill? Who is for it? Who is against it? We're gonna present all sides. Maybe we'll have a little bit of a debate here. State of Georgia also throwing out some very critical charges on the Donald Trump case down there, specifically actually related to that, quote, perfect phone call with Brad Raffensperger. So excited to break some of that down. RFK Jr. Making waves, possibly announcing his definitely announcing his vice presidential candidate next week. Some interesting names there on the list. Aaron Rodgers, Jesse Ventura, all kinds of different folks. Ben Shapiro, by his own admission, lighting the internet on fire, coming out against Social Security and the retirement age. Let's just say interesting, to say the least. Ryan in particular is going to break that one down. And then Don Lemon doing an interview with Elon Musk and unceremoniously being fired by Elon with his new partnership on Twitter before it even began. So hilarity ensued for every party involved. And then Ryan, you've got a great guest for us today. His name is Dan Foote.
Yeah, he was the envoy to Haiti who resigned in protest a couple years ago. If you read his resignation letter, what he said would happen as a result of Biden's policy towards Haiti, it's precisely what has unfolded for the last couple years.
Well, I'm excited to talk to him. You in particular have been such a fantastic resource on Haiti, so I'm really, really glad that we could have you in the chair today. So, all right, let's go ahead and start with TikTok. Oh, before I get to that, of course, if you want to be a premium subscriber, breakingpoints.com. Support our work. We've got all that extra special stuff that is coming down the pipeline. Just had a meeting about it yesterday. I can't give away too much. Can't give away too much. But big things are happening.
Unless you become a premium subscriber, it's not going to happen.
That's right. And that's right. Unless you become a premium subscriber, and you're going to be the first to know about it, as always. So let's go ahead and start with TikTok. So there was major legislation passed the House of Representatives yesterday. Let's go and put this up there on the screen. How each House member voted on the bill that could ban TikTok. Overall, it was a pretty overwhelming majority that went ahead and passed. You had 352 votes that supported. You had 65 votes that opposed. In terms of the breakdown, 155 Democrats voted yes, GOP 197, 50 Democrats voted no. 15 Republicans voted no. There were 14 overall who did not vote and only one person who voted present. That one person is Yasmin Crockett. I wonder what her objection or not objection to the bill was. But anyway, so that's the overall breakdown. In terms of the people who voted no and who are Republicans, I think this is pretty noteworthy. A lot of them were Freedom Caucus, more libertarian types. We have Andy Biggs, Dan Bishop, Warren Davidson, Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Clay Higgins, and let's see, Nancy Mace, Thomas Massey, Tom McClintock, Alex Mooney, Barry Moore, Scott Perry, David Schweikert, and Greg Steube. So disproportionately, kind of the dissident right. More Freedom MAGA, Caucus, libertarian, Freedom Caucus. Exactly. Pretty bipartisan, I would say, in terms of the support. Now, there's been a lot of discussion on what the hell is in this bill or not. We're going to break that down, but I thought it would be useful for everyone to present the cases for and against by kind of the two major legislative champions on either side. First is going to be Congressman Mike Gallagher, who co-sponsored and authored the legislation. Here's what he had to say in his case for the bill.
TikTok is a threat to our national security because it is owned by ByteDance, which does the bidding of the Chinese Communist Party. We know this because ByteDance leadership says so and because Chinese law requires it. This bill therefore forces TikTok to break up with the Chinese Communist Party. It does not apply to American companies. It only applies to companies subject to the control of foreign adversaries defined by Congress. It says nothing about election interference and cannot be turned against any American social media platform. It does not impact websites in general. The only impacted sites are those associated with foreign adversary apps, such as TikTok.com. It can never be used to penalize individuals. The text explicitly prohibits that, and it cannot be used to censor speech. It takes no position at all on the content of speech, only foreign adversary control. Foreign adversary control of what is becoming the dominant news platform for Americans under 30.
Hang on to that foreign adversary. That's going to be a line of contention. Let's hear from Congressman Thomas Massey, who laid out the case against the bill. Let's take a listen.
They've described the TikTok application as a Trojan horse, but there's some of us who feel that either intentionally or unintentionally, this legislation to ban TikTok is actually a Trojan horse. Some of us are concerned that there are First Amendment implications here. Americans have the right to view information. We don't need to be protected by the government from information. Some of us just don't want the president picking which apps we can put on our phones or which websites that we can visit. We don't think that's appropriate. We also think it's dangerous to give the president that kind of power, to give him the power to decide what Americans can see on their phones and their computers. To give him that sort of discretion, we also think is dangerous. Now, people say that this TikTok ban will only apply to TikTok or maybe another company that pops up just like TikTok, but the bill is written so broadly that the president could abuse that discretion and include other companies that aren't just social media companies.
Okay, so that's where it is, Ryan. I've talked a lot here, so give us your reaction. What do you think?
I mean, I've got a couple different reactions. One, I think you can't even respond to, which is that, okay, I can understand why no country would want a different country controlling its news environment. Like you wouldn't want kind of Russia owning NBC News or whatever.
Take Russia out of it. Let's just say any country.
China,
Japan,
any country, fine.
Even a neutral, Brazil. All right,
so,
I love Brazil.
Like from the perspective of U.S. national security interests, I can see the argument. I don't care. Like I'm not a part of U.S. national security interests, and I think most people who use TikTok also don't care. And I think particularly with what the U.S. has done with its hegemony around the world since World War II, it has not earned the kind of moral credit among a lot of Americans to say, you know what? So you say you need these extraordinary powers to crack down on my social media apps so that you can continue to do what you've been doing for the last 50 to 70 years around the world? Nah, no thanks. Let Chairman Xi have a shot.
So here's what I would say in response, Ryan, is that take national security out of it. I believe very strongly in U.S. markets and in our principle of sovereignty and reciprocal trade. So, for example, President Biden yesterday came out against the acquisition of U.S. steel by Nippon Steel. Well, Japan is one of our great allies. I mean, unlike the Europeans, they actually produce things and, are important to the global economy. And they, also are willing to defend themselves if we ever give them the ability. So there's a lot going on for Japan. I love Japan. I don't foresee any problem in the future from a national security perspective. That said, we can't allow a Japanese company to own U.S. Steel. U.S. Steel we recognize 100% as critical infrastructure. And I wonder where you draw the line. So, for example, Huawei, which was banned by the Trump administration from critical access to telecom. So in that scenario, seems to make sense to me. We have critical infrastructure, the wirings literally of U.S. communications. Well, there doesn't seem to be all that much of a substantive difference between the two. And really, when it comes down to, again, even taking national security out of it, baseline fairness level, American companies can't do business in China. Even if you want to do business in China, you have to have a Chinese subsidiary that owns 51%. Our tech companies are completely banned over there. You may not like the tech companies, I don't, but they're at least under our jurisdiction. They're U.S. citizens. They're subject to U.S. law. TikTok and ByteDance are not subject to any of that. I will give the counter case, and I would like for you to expound on some of this. Michael Tracy, I think, has done the best job of overlaying some of the biggest concerns within the bill. Let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. He says, here are some of the extensive points that I have raised about this bill itself. The bill goes well beyond banning TikTok targeting any, quote, website, desktop application, mobile application, or augmented or immersive technology application claimed to be a, quote, foreign adversary controlled. That includes China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran. He says, I agree with Congressman Warren Davidson, who pointed out in his floor speech that the wide-ranging definition of application could be future attempts to prohibit other widely used apps like Telegram. The bill authorizes the future expulsion actions to be taken unilaterally by the president, provided that he determines that an application presenting a significant threat to national security of the U.S. He says, he talks specifically about the president possibly making unilateral determination. I quibble, actually, with Michael's definition here. And he says, I don't support handing radical new speech abridging powers to either Biden or to Donald Trump. Go ahead, Ryan.
So the broader point that Michael is making is one that you need to take into serious consideration, which is be careful what power you give to the United States government.
As you should. I agree.
Whenever Congress, says like, look, I promise this is all we care about. Just this one little thing. Because what you're saying is reasonable. Like every country should, be able to have sovereignty over its critical infrastructure. If you don't, you don't really have democracy because
you don't have a country.
You don't. Yeah, you wouldn't have a country because you know, as a democratic public, you elect representatives who then are going to execute the expression of the will of that public. But if they can't actually do that, if they don't have the levers because some other country has the levers, then you don't have a country anymore. So fine, I get now setting aside whether I support the U.S. being a country and like, given everything it's done around the world.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. That makes sense from a kind of basic level. But as Michael is saying, what else does this allow the government to do? And do we trust the government to stay within the lines? So, for instance, is Telegram next? Telegram, founded by a Russian who now has, I think, he fled Russia in 2014. Yes, I think he now has dual French and Emirati citizenship. So Emiratis are currently our friends, so are the French, right?
That's right. Neither would qualify under the bill.
But he's Russian. He's got a Russian name.
Well, he is about to IPO his company, and so that means it would be publicly traded, which means it actually wouldn't even be subject to this. But and that's kind of what it gets.
So, anyway, so if TikTok goes public, then it's cool.
Okay, that's up to ByteDance. Right. You know, ByteDance. Hey, if you are welcome to actually publicly trade here on the New York Stock Exchange and bring your company into full compliance with U.S. law. Guess what? They will never do that because they're controlled, again, and owned by the Chinese. And I don't even care about that. You run your country the way you want. I'm not saying we should democratize China or whatever. I don't care what the Chinese want to do in their own country. My point is only that if you look at this from basic level, and even with the bill, I completely understand. Look, I came out, for example, Restrict Act. Do you remember that one? The Restrict Act? This is the previous iteration. This is the previous iteration of the TikTok ban. It would have given broad authority to the U.S. government to basically designate the president solely to unilaterally declare any application as a threat to U.S. national security. Absolutely, no way. However, I have read this bill. It's only 12 pages long. And actually, I'm going to ask my team, we're going to put a link to the bill in the description. I want everybody to go and read it for themselves.
And 12 pages is tiny because they only use like a third of the page.
It's really not big. Like it's not long.
It's like triple space.
Only, you know, what, maybe 1,000 words or something. My monologues are longer than the Stan bill. It's not hard to understand. Friend of mine, Brendan Carr, he's an FCC commissioner. He put together kind of a rebuttal to some of these arguments. Let's put this up there. And I'm going to read from some of them. He says, quote, if you are an individual user, this bill confers zero authority. I think that's very important because you're not going after TikTok users specifically. Second, this bill applies only to applications controlled by one of 4 foreign adversary governments, previously codified into law by Congress: China, Iran, North Korea, or Russia. The bill is clear that it is not enough to simply waive operations there or to do business there. It must be controlled by one of those 4 governments. I want to really spend a lot of time on this because this is where I think Michael gets it completely wrong. One of 4 foreign adversary governments, as again codified into law by Congress. The bill does not say. So, for example, if President Biden wanted, let's make up a country, Zimbabwe. If President Biden wanted to just say Zimbabwe is now a threat to national security, it would require Congress to actually codify into law that Zimbabwe is now a foreign adversary controlled government. Now, do I trust Congress 100%? No, I don't trust Congress. Do I trust the president, Trump, Biden, are them? Absolutely not. My point, though, is that it is not unilateral in the way that the Restrict Act was, and it would require, at least theoretically, democratic agreement to confer foreign adversary status. This is where I've seen a lot of people who are like, well, Rumble and Twitter are next. It's like, hey, guys.
No, they're not.
First of all, Rumble is a publicly traded company. You can go and look who owns their shares or not. I actually looked it up right before we went. Guess what? It's not 20% controlled, which is the threshold for foreign ownership. That's number one. Number two, Saudi Arabia, for example, owns, I forget, some small stake in Elon's Twitter. Well, first, Saudi Arabia's not on that list. Second, even if they were, it's not up to 20%. And my other take here would be, well, any company that I think is even remotely important, I don't really think a 20% ownership should be had by a foreign government, period. I'm kind of a radical on that, but you can argue with me if you would like. I'm just coming back to the fact that, look, I understand the concerns about overreach, and I understand people are like, oh, Patriot Act 2.0. The Patriot Act was, what, 350 pages? This is not the Patriot Act. It's not even remotely the same. There are a lot of things in here which have a lot more onerous control. He also, Brendan points out, it is only after a public process and Congress has been reported to and then codify this new thing could even this specific national security threat then come in. And then finally, every single one of these hoops must be cleared and met. More so, what everybody's ignoring, and if you will see too, if you were happy to read in the bill, is that any company that is subject to any of this legislation enforcement then has a 180-day period to actually challenge this and have their day in court. ByteDance, TikTok, and others fully would be able to bring a challenge in the U.S. District Court of Appeals in the District of Columbia, and then, if they want to, they can kick it up to the Supreme Court and they can rule on the constitutionality of this legislation. But having read it and all of that, I don't think it violates the Constitution from a basic trade reciprocal perspective. And, given the fact that you have access to the U.S. court system, you have a pretty onerous process. I mean, when's the last time Congress agreed on anything other than Ukraine on what is a foreign adversary or whatever? Look, I would just ask you to at least admit this. It's not the Patriot Act 2.0.
No, it's definitely not.
You can oppose this and say, and at least admit it is not the Patriot Act.
No, it's definitely not the Patriot Act 2.0. And I think one thing that annoys me about how this is unfolded, and this doesn't really undermine your point, but I think it's important context, is that the U.S. allowed this to happen by empowering our kind of tech oligarchs.
Yes.
And then the Obama administration, then Trump, allowing all sorts of mergers, and then allowing this like catch and kill where, anytime there was a decent app that was about to take off, Facebook or Google or somebody else would like buy it up and then just kill it, so that our like crappy little apps and social media companies continued to be the only ones, thinking that the world had no alternative, no way to challenge them because they would just come in and beat them. But then TikTok comes along and does something that people like more, and it caught our protected industry, protected by our kind of monopoly failure to enforce antitrust policy, caught them sleeping. And at the same time, we were working hand in glove with these tech companies, spying on Americans, spying on everybody around the world, and allowing them to just hoover up everybody's data so that we could have a little backdoor to it. And so it's a failure to take any responsibility for doing your own industrial policy, for guiding your own kind of social media policy, for protecting the civil liberties of your own population. And so when they then come crying about TikTok, it just lands on deaf ears.
I get that. And you know what my response would be? You know what? Luckily for you and me, we live in a democratic country and we can vote.
Lena Khan is coming for him.
We, our government re-elected Joe Biden. He appointed Lena Khan. She is currently sticking it to big business and to these tech companies. I would also say Joe Biden has actually had a significant number of executive orders that have impact on data transfer to China, all of that. So look, I mean, for me, a lot of this comes back to, it's just like, then you don't believe in the government at all. And if you don't believe it's like, but then just be a libertarian. Like, I don't know what to say. Then be Ben Shapiro and come out against fucking income tax. Like, it's like, I believe in the government. I believe in the American, and I believe in the concept of government, not the current government. I believe in the American people. I believe that representative democracy on a long enough timeline eventually does deliver roughly what some people want. It's not always easy, and it's not nearly as actionable as it should be. And I would like to return to that. That said, it's not China. And when I look at this, it is very obvious that a forced sale, again, not a ban, a forced sale, is the most elegant option. You force them to sell it. They get to all these TikTokers and all these content creators. I don't want them to lose it. Listen, I don't like TikTok. I don't use TikTok, but it's a free country. You can use it. You want to rot your brain 75 minutes a day on social media, be it Twitter, TikTok, or everybody else. That's your business. You can do what you want.
Now, they're saying they're not going to sell it. Do you believe them?
I don't believe them. Well, okay. We'll put it two ways.
To explain to people that the bill forces a sale within 180 days.
By ByteDance.
By ByteDance to an American, or I guess they could go public too. And if they don't do that, then it is banned.
Then it is banned.
And so the head of TikTok is saying, we're not going to sell it. It will be banned.
Well, I think that's a negotiating position because what they want to do is they want to get all these TikTokers to come out and lobby against Congress, which, by the way, is actually massively backfired, hilariously enough. But, I mean, at the end of the day, it's really up to ByteDance. Are you going to say no to... I mean, the sale price of TikTok is probably going to be nearly $1 trillion. Like, it's going to be $800-900 billion. There's already multiple U.S. investors that have lined up. And let me head that off, too, because Crystal brought this up. She's like, well, Sam Altman and OpenAI have said they're going to buy it. I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't agree with that. And luckily for me, I live in the United States of America, where our court system can block that if we want to. Yeah, exactly. Regulators have a say over who gets to buy it or not. Unfortunately, the real thing that could happen is this could become a geopolitical football. And don't forget, because ByteDance doesn't get to run its own business, the CEO, Zhang Zhiming, even if he does want to sell it to, you know, whoever, somebody here in America, some investor conglomerate or something like that, he would still have to get sign-off from Chinese regulators. So I don't think it's actually a matter of whether Zhang Zhiming or the ByteDance wants to sell it. This is all in Xi Jinping's court, whether it's really up to him. I mean, just yesterday, the Chinese Ministry of Affairs came out and said, it is unfair and goes against the principles of market fairness. And this is what drives me nuts. I'm like, okay, name one U.S. tech company that gets to do business in China. One, just one. The only one that comes even remotely close is Tesla, and there's a lot of problems with Elon's relationship right now with that. So any final thoughts before we move on?
I just also find it wild that the American politicians basically blame TikTok for young people being against genocide in Gaza.
I think you're right, and this is a fair concern.
That seems to be the thing that really pushed them over the top.
I think you were right, and that is a fair concern. And if I were you, I would bring up the exact same thing. What is the impetus, the action of why? I unfortunately do think that Israel and all of that did play a significant thing. And if it was a ban, I think I would speak out against it at this point because I don't think that that's right. But given the fact that
what happens if it does get banned?
Well, I mean, that's the thing.
Like let's say that we're bluffing in some ways.
Yeah.
Let's say they call our bluff and actually just not take it down.
I think it would be unfortunate, but I think that the principle of reciprocal trade is too important. And I would also say I blame Trump a huge part of this. He should have finished the job in 2019. People can go roll the tape. I've been talking about this since 2017.
I will say I appreciate you believing in the idea of government.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing.
It's just this government.
I do believe that the government can and has worked in the past. Relatively recently, it's really totally gone off the rails, you know, since the post 9/11 security state. But, you know, we've been through very dark periods. That doesn't mean that we can't reclaim it. I believe very much in democracy and the American project.
Self-government.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. And that's why we are very lucky, I think, to live in a country where we actually get to vote as opposed to a literal dictatorship, which is completely controlled by this company. And
if this brought about genuine self-government and actually representative government, hey, you know
let's put about it this way. And I would say, this is what I would say to Crystal too. She's like, well, young people will rise up. Good. I mean, okay. If people are pissed off, and that's the other thing. Look, this is my opinion. This is my voice. If enough young people or whomever, TikTok users, because not just young people, get pissed off about this, you are welcome to have a campaign and to vote and to extract a promise from your legislature and from Joe Biden or Donald Trump, whoever would be the next president. And you can use, luckily, you know, again, your voice to overturn this. You be my guest. I would fight against it, but I believe very much in their ability to try and to campaign against it. So that kind of brings it kind of to the core principles I think that are in the debate. Even though I think my opinion is strong, like I wanted to make sure you got your voice in and also to voice Thomas Massey's opinion, Michael Tracy. I highly recommend, though, I have great respect for those two individuals, so I'm not going to tarnish them or anything. I think they have a legitimate point of view, and we'll see what happens.
And what did Ben Franklin say? We have made a sticky algorithmic app, if you can keep it.
I like it. I like it. I like it a lot. In terms of the future, I don't know where this is going to go. From what I have heard, I'm curious what you think. At the very least, it's going to take a while in the Senate if it ever does pass. Yeah. I'm dubious that it passes at all, personally, just because you got Democrats who control the chamber. do they really want to be on the, let's say the app does get banned.
They've seen
do
the
they really
numbers.
want to, get screwed by something like that? I don't think they're willing to take that risk.
There's not enough weed that you could legalize to earn back the numbers that you're going to lose from banning TikTok.
Well, we'll see.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.